listening to the most original talk radio station anywhere. We are LA Talk Radio at latalkradio.com.
You're listening to Fouché Way with Brandon Fouché, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Well, hello, and welcome to the Fouché Way radio show, live every Thursday at 1 o'clock p.m., sponsored by a nonprofit organization called Canine Hope for Improvement Program, where we hope to improve the quality of our dogs' lives by moving towards a no-kill society. The number here is 818-602-4929. Well, it's been a really rough, emotional week. 2 dogs fighting and losing the battle with cancer. A horse, a beautiful young horse, fighting and losing the battle with colic. And I know that it's something that I must accept because I'm in the business of saving lives. But just because I accept it doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. But I've got to stay strong, and I'm strong on this mission. I'm strong because it brings an additional meaning to my life. You know, last night, I guess because of everything, I had a dream. And I had this dream last night that death, like an old friend that I have visited many times in the past with my dogs, was waiting in the abyss for each and every one of my original team, as well as myself. And in the dream, I asked him, "Why are you following us?" And he said, "To remind you to be present, to be strong. Because one day in the future, you will not be the one for them that have yet to come." And so when I woke up this morning, I thought about the most important lesson my dogs have taught me was to live in the present, meaning to enjoy them while they're here, while I'm here, and to inform others to understand them. I believe that when enough people together wish for help and hope for change, one is created out of the wishing and hoping to bring about that change. I feel this way because faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not yet seen. But am I saying that I am that one? Not at all. What I am saying is that every time I meet a client that wakes up and then enlightens someone else to wake up, then I know we are one in our thinking and our actions. You know, it's said it takes a village to raise a child. And I say it takes a pack to raise a dog. But what is the meaning of these two sayings? It means we are all going to have to be on the same page, the same agenda, and on the same path to raise the one who will then raise another, one by one, moving towards the same goal. And that goal is no kill. But the path, and the path that I would like for you to journey with me, is to wake up the owners and potential owners of dogs that will be adopting. See, saving a dog is a great and noble gesture, but if you're not doing something different, and if you're no different than the last owner who thought that they had the answers, and the dog still ended up in the shelter, then we're all in trouble. See, the information is here, it's available, but the people that we want to reach are so far spread out, we can't reach them before the dog goes through the system the second and third time, if he's lucky to get that far. And so we need to add more strategy and branch out. And so I want to take this to the streets. I'm looking for a group of people who would be willing, with their dogs, to get together and meet me to help someone in their neighborhood who's having trouble walking their dog because every time they see people and their dog begins to perform, they shut down and become embarrassed. With this group of people, we will spread out strategically in strategic places in your neighborhood to set your dog up to fail by being on that corner or next to that tree or walking the same way or the opposite way. And I will show you the correct way to respond. See, by using the people and the dogs this way, we work as a village and as a pack who will not be judging you. And you will be asked to express, if needed, your problems with fear, your problems with discipline, your problems with domination and leadership if you're misunderstanding. It will be like an intervention with you and your dog, videotaped to be critiqued for you later to view. And so my first caller today, I'm sure, would love this because she's still having a little problem with the leash, and her name is Jenna. Jenna's been on the show before after her evaluation with her dog Tucker. Jenna, how are you today?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Now, Jenna, this is a very exciting experiment that we're about to do. Do you think that you would want to be a part of something like this?
Oh, yes, definitely.
You would? Okay, great. Because that's what we're about to do. And I just want to get a bunch of people together, yourself as well, because I think that if we go into a real life situation, we can really help you to overcome your fears. Because a lot of times we're strong in our homes, because we're inside, but we fall apart when we go outside. And I'm sure you've experienced that, right?
Yes.
Okay. But, I had you on before, and those of you who are going to the Facebook, you'll see, Tucker there in the pack with a bunch of dogs. But you did something very exciting last weekend, and I actually told you that you didn't have to do it, that I would actually do it first. And you were strong. You said, no, I want to go. Tell our listeners what you did.
Yeah, so I decided to attempt to bring Tucker to the dog park for the first time on my own. And basically, I thought I had him under control enough in the home where I was willing to take, not a risk, but just willing to do it on my own. So I called you before I did it, and you just told me some tips. And then you said, if you don't feel comfortable, I could come with you. But I said, I think between me and my boyfriend, I think we could figure this out. So we were actually really nervous because we saw him with your dogs, but we understand that he was in a controlled setting and your dogs are under control and he was fine and you were there, so we trusted everybody. But so we kind of did it, and at first it was it was a little challenge when we first walked in because he did try to dominate some other dogs, and he did kind of almost snap at a dog and stuff like that. So we corrected him immediately, and from then on he was pretty good, and he was catching on quickly. And then within the maybe 30-40 minutes, he was actually starting to play with the other dogs and acting like a real dog, and we didn't see him do that in your facility. So it was exciting.
Yeah, that's the first time you've seen him play, right?
Yeah. So we didn't know he had that in him either. We just thought he might follow us around or do it, kind of just stay to the side, but he was right in there with the other dogs. And I don't, like you said, I don't know if he wasn't on perfect behavior, but he was definitely making progress.
Right.
So it was exciting to watch.
I want to critique that for those who've seen the video. But first I want to say something, which is very important because, we have this tendency to believe that alphas are calm and assertive behavior, that they're like this cool, calm, and collective animal. And I've said before, alphas are anything but calm and cool when things aren't going their way. And what I really am excited about what you did is when you went into the dog park, even though you were nervous, and I've often told people, because they ask me, well, when I feel this way, what should I do? And at that moment, you have to do something dominant in order to bring the submissive behavior in your dog to actually embolden yourself to be the leader. And so you felt a little embarrassed because you went in there and you made these noises with him, and he responded. And I think you even kind of apologized to people that were around you, right? And
yeah, so when I went in, I had my tools, Tucker actually almost kind of tried to correct another dog, but the guy was very understanding, and I kind of just explained to him, this is our first time, and as soon as you say that, everybody's like, oh, I've been there,
right,
get it. So.
But they understood that you had to do that. You had to go off.
Mhm.
You know, and that's our biggest thing. We get a little embarrassed, we freeze, and we think, maybe this thing will just pan out. But no, you don't allow that to happen. You take charge of the whole situation. And you know, if people see you going berserk with your dog for being negative, they're going to respect you more. And that's what you saw that day, didn't you?
Yeah, like I said, I walked in and I just had my, I had to correct Tucker because right away he was, you could see him. He was gonna like go after the other dog, not in a horrible attack way, just like a little nervous. And so I did my correction right away, and then I kind of went to almost every single person there, and I just said, this is our first time at the park, so I apologize if anything happens. But I might look crazy, but it's gonna help. So, and then they all said, they were like, oh, I totally get it. I've been there. And, every dog needs to figure it out when they first come in here, and they'll kind of work it out on their own. So there was a couple times, or like one time was through the fence, and I just I went crazy. And the other people, I think, appreciated it. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, and they also said people come in there all the time and, kind of correct their dogs. So it's not a new foreign thing to them. So.
Exactly. And so that helped you to really become calm, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, definitely.
And, it's so interesting. I want to critique this video real quick because I think that you were so happy that you were there and that he was having a great time that you guys just wanted to let him know how happy you were, right? And what's happening when I'm watching the video, he's being assertive. He's not being aggressive. He's being a little dominant, a little assertive. But there's, that play mixture in there because play is really, when you see it, it's two dogs trying to determine who is more dominant than the other without actually fighting. And so that's exactly what he was doing. But that's your opportunity to step in and control that kind of behavior, to diffuse it, kind of shut it down a bit. But what I saw you guys doing, because you were so happy that he was there, is that you were rewarding the fact that he was running around and introducing himself to other dogs when actually you were rewarding that assertive behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And there's a couple of times when, I heard in the video you said, wow, look, you're having a great time. See, it's not so bad. Don't you like it? And then you're saying, you're a good boy. And then he took off running, and I heard you say, whoa, wait a minute. Maybe you're not a good boy. You almost said that. You're like,
I kind of switched my gears as soon as I saw him take off again.
Right. It's almost as if subconsciously you knew, but the brain didn't tell you why you said, it's because you just rewarded him. Okay? So when you're in the dog park,
I didn't even realize it. So,
I know you didn't. That's why I love the video. The purpose of being in the dog park is socialization. So when you get in the dog park, all I want you to do is loop around the dog park. I don't want you to stand still, okay? I want him to follow you, and I don't want you to say anything positive in the dog park because you may be positively reinforcing negative behaviors, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, everything was great. Just keep your mouth shut, keep moving, control behaviors that make you feel nervous, and get out of that dog park until the next time. You got it?
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Yep, I got it.
Right,
yeah, we'll improve, but
great.
We're getting there. It was just exciting anyway. So.
I know. And I want to see him again because I want to see if he's going to play like that at my place, okay? So I can't wait to see him again because that will let me know that if he's not playing exactly like that in my place or at all, then that means that he is emboldened, and you'll be able to see the difference. So you'll know that you need to step in, okay? So I wanted to have you on so that our listeners can hear you and take a look at that video, and I will be talking to you soon. All right, Jenna?
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right, my next guest is Linda. Linda with Brooklyn, Bailey, and Bullinger. Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you. I want to let our listeners know I have not seen your dogs. I've only seen pictures of your dogs. This was a phone consultation. And you were having problems with Bullinger and Bailey. Can you kind of tell us the two girls?
German Shorthair Pointer female and the Rescue Cocker.
Right. You were having a problem. There are pictures on the Facebook page, so everyone take a look at them. And you and your husband called me because they were getting into some serious fights, correct?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And go on.
Luckily, we left when they first started. It was once every 3 months or 3.5 months, and I would get after them, and one would start it or the other one would start it. So they were both to blame.
Mm-hmm.
And I would get after them, and I think, well, I solved that problem. And then a few months would go by, and then it would happen again. And luckily, the cocker never got hurt. She had one little cut on her ear once, but we let her get really hairy and matted, so serve like armor, So we thought that would, but we thought it would eventually end, and actually it got worse, and we were going on vacation for a month, and I got very, very worried about what's going to happen when we're gone.
Mm-hmm.
So I called you in a panic after they had a particularly bad fight where nobody got hurt again, but it's very scary. So I called you in because Katie Larkin, a friend of mine referred me to Katie Larkin, and Katie Larkin referred me to you.
Mm.
So I said, help me, I'm going away on vacation, what should I do? And so they only had one fight when we were gone, but I got a call in Italy at 3:30 in the morning from Los Angeles. I knew it wasn't going to be great news.
Right.
But since we had the phone conversation, the consultation, there's obviously been no fights at all.
Well, I want to talk about that a bit because, in talking to you, you mentioned to me that you had grandchildren. And
yes, I
always relate relationships with dogs with people. It is a relationship that you are in. It's very easy to see if you can humanize it and look at relationships with people. Okay, you'll see the parallel in it. And you said you have 2 grandchildren. One of the youngest, his name is Xander. Is that correct?
Right, Xander, and the older one, Xander is 2, and Lucas just turned 4.
Okay. And I asked you some questions about your grandkids because I wanted you to relate that to your dogs. And your oldest grandson, you would say, is spoiled. Is that correct?
They're probably both spoiled because they're the only 2 grandchildren in both sides of the family.
Okay.
But especially Lucas, because Lucas was the first, and so he's like the prodigal son or grandson, because he has, because of divorce and everything, he ends up with 7 grandparents of sorts.
Oh my gosh.
And he was the only one for, not quite 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, and he likes attention. So I go to visit them as often as I can in Connecticut. And so on my last trip, Lucas comes running over to me, Grammy, I can count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, he wasn't even 4 yet when he did this, and I thought, gee, that's great. And then the 2-year-old comes over and goes, Nammy, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And Lucas looked at him like he could kill him. And so they went up to bed because I had arrived, in the evening, and I said I would take them to school the next morning to help out my son and my daughter-in-law. And I noticed that Xander had a black and blue mark on his cheek.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't say anything. I got them, and I took the boys to school. And when I took Xander in, his teacher comes over, and she says, oh, Xander, you have another bruise. What happened? And he said, Brother again. And so I guess what's happening here is we got the older dog, the queen, the spoiled girl, the German short-haired pointer, and we have the little Cocker Spaniel coming in, aren't I cute, and is in everybody's face all the time.
Right.
And so, the last time they had a fight, which I was in Italy, but my son said that Bailey had Bollinger and was shaking her back and forth. Mm. Now, when you understand that Bailey weighs 60 pounds and Bollinger weighs probably 26 or 27,
mm-hmm.
I don't know how she could even pick up the dog, much less shake him. But right. She's a hunting dog, and that's what she was doing. So I said, oh, my God. So the minute we got back, we called you.
Right.
And said, help. I've got my 2 grandsons living here, except their dogs.
Well, that's why I wanted you to tell that story, because jealousy is real between
Yes,
dogs, okay?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you're used to, kind of spoiling the kids, you're going to spoil your dogs. And you know what?
Yes.
That's okay if you understand that that's what you're doing, and that you're going to also practice the discipline and domination. Because otherwise, this does not get better, it gets worse. Okay? And you guys were doing all of the ball playing and the toy playing, creating all of the jealousy. And I think even with your one dog, because I try to make things work for you, Brooklyn, I said, if you're going to play ball with Brooklyn, separate him, because he's just a subordinate dog. But you cannot do that with Bailey or Bullinger or in their presence. They can't see that kind of behavior. Because when Bullinger sees that kind of behavior, what does she do? She growls. She
growls when she gets excited.
Yeah, because excitement is related to the hunt.
Yeah, she will go and get in. Well, Brooklyn doesn't care, but she will go and get in Brooklyn's face. And Brooklyn really doesn't like that.
Mm-hmm.
Just hold on. My groomer just rang the doorbell.
That's fine. You know what I wanted to do?
Yeah.
Is just for you to tell that story, and just to know that you've got a spoiled dog, just like the kids, and just like you would handle it with the kids, we need to talk about how to handle it with the dogs. Okay?
Okay.
All right, Linda. I'm going to let you go because we do have other people to talk to. But thank you for coming on. Okay?
Thank you very much, Brandon.
You're very welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. My next guest is Grace with Ziggy. Grace, are you there?
Yes. Hi, Brandon.
How you doing?
I'm good.
Okay. I want people to take a look at the Facebook, and you will see a picture of Ziggy. He's a Boston Terrier. I think you got him. Is it Boston Buddies?
Yes.
Okay, Boston Buddies. And you have been having a terrible time with this dog. I remember when you first called me and I let you talk and I asked you, what have you been doing? And I think you described to me everything, and I mean, I've talked to a lot of people. You have described to me everything that I have ever heard or read to do on the internet or in a book. You were doing it. Is that correct?
Yes, I was trying to take care of it myself, but I was failing.
And listen, the way you were talking to me in terms of positive reinforcement, treat training, training in itself, I mean, it was textbook. And even it was textbook. And I remember in our initial conversation, when I was trying to talk to you, I think the things that I was saying was so different, you were speechless. And
yes,
there were times I was like, hello, are you there? and it got to the point where I said to myself, I don't think I can help this woman right now. Let me refer her to some literature that, I think would help her, that I'm affiliated with, and to listen to some of the videos and things like that. And I had to do you like that because I wanted you to go away from me, look and listen to these things, and then contact me again. You remember me telling you that?
Yes, you encouraged me to listen to your shows first, so I got a better idea of your perspective on treating dogs, and it made a lot of sense to me. It made me change the way I look at dogs and how my relationship is with them.
Mm-hmm.
I think that with the positive reinforcement, there was so much about it and so many stories, success stories with positive training, and a lot of negative associations with other methods of treating dog aggression.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought this was positive reinforcement was the best way. But after talking to you and listening to your older shows, I realized that I was just making I was rewarding his negative behavior with these treats.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really know what he was thinking. I thought I was rewarding his the little requests I had, like sit or stay.
Mm-hmm.
But in fact, I was rewarding his negative behavior and what he was thinking.
Yeah. And their society as a whole, when you think about dogs, that's what
Mm-hmm.
we think about, because that's the only thing that's out there for us, And what we're
Mm-hmm.
really doing is, and I want to explain this, we're taking a method that was designed for subordinate dogs. Dogs
Mm-hmm.
that were bred to be brought into our home, to live with us like humans. And training works for that. It's tricks to teach them to do things, right? It's like in the
Mm-hmm.
beginning when we worked with wild animals and we couldn't tame them, we taught them to sit on the box. We taught them tricks. But now we have a domesticated animal that all they need is socialization, but we're still trying to train. And this is
Yes.
where the problem comes in. Because if you've got a dog that really doesn't have a training problem and you're trying to train, then your problem can be because of training, what you're doing,
Yes.
because you're creating stress. And especially in certain breeds that the reactivity of their nervous system is much higher than others, when you feed into that, then you're creating more of a neurotic behavior. So it's really actually spinning out of control, And
Yeah.
and
And
you
in
did
addition-
those things, right? You played games and tug of war.
Mm-hmm.
Did you do that?
And I encouraged it. He wasn't that into it, but I definitely encouraged it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And in addition to the positive training, the treats that I was feeding him,
Mm-hmm.
My fear started to increase, my anxiety level, and especially during our walks. So I think that in addition to the positive training, my fear was also feeding into his stress.
Wow. And what's interesting is you are pretty confident in your home, right?
I am.
Okay. So then when you go outside and your dog is not confident, actually they're insecure or they're fearful, and then you
Mm-hmm.
become fearful, then that's a recipe for disaster.
Yes.
I mean, that's...
And we were feeding off of each other. He was becoming more aggressive, and I was becoming more fearful.
Mm-hmm.
And then my fear was increasing, so it was leading him to become more aggressive, and it led to more craziness.
Right. And how over the top would you say, for our listeners, listening, how serious of a problem would you say this was with him? And tell exactly what he was doing on the walk.
Oh, okay. Maybe the dog, if we saw another dog maybe about 20, 30, 40 feet away, he would go crazy. He would bark and jump, lunge, and if the dog got any closer, he would start foaming at the mouth and the nose.
Mm-hmm.
And he's only 20 pounds, but he's so strong that even if I have him in a short leash, I sometimes I would fall over myself as I'm trying to walk away from the situation.
Wow. And he was very vocal too.
Very, and it scared away my neighbors.
And
but, yeah. And so now, so because of that reaction to dogs, it would make me not want to pass by other dogs. So I'm pretty sure that also gave him the message that seeing other dogs was not a pleasant experience.
Right. And then he began to have a problem with the leash being put on and off him, right?
Yes. He associated stress with the leash, and he started biting the leash when I was trying to control his behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And also when he went to, there was one incident at the daycare when once he was on a leash, his playful attitude at daycare instantly transformed into his leash behavior, where he would lunge and bark at the same dog that he probably played with in the other room.
Mm-hmm.
And that led to a dog fight at the daycare, and 2 attendants at the daycare were bitten by Ziggy.
Wow. And that was even after the fight was broken up and he was in a separate room, right?
Oh, the attendant, she stepped in between the 2 dogs, in between Ziggy and the dog that Ziggy was trying to get at.
Mm-hmm.
And so, since Ziggy couldn't get the dog, Ziggy bit the woman's leg and her hand, because her hand was close to the leash,
Mm-hmm.
or her hand was on the leash.
Right.
And then the other attendant tried to stop him too, and he bit her hand as well.
Wow. So how did that make you feel about Ziggy? I mean, you really got to think about it now, right?
After that, I felt powerless, and that was when I realized that all my reinforcement, my positive reinforcement training was not working, and I realized I needed something effective and quick, because I didn't want another person to get hurt. I didn't want another dog to get hurt, and I knew it was inevitable for me to possibly lose control of him, because he just gets so wild, and there could be an off chance where I lose my grip on the leash and he could attack another dog or a person.
Right. And, I want to ask you, because there's this show is about saving lives. It's about helping people to realize something
Mm-hmm.
that they didn't realize, and also empower them to be able to do what I'm asking them to do and what I can do. And it has to work that quick, because I believe that people really don't have that much time. But what I want to know, for those listeners that are out there that are going through what you were going through, how did you personally feel about Ziggy, your personal feeling now with him doing that?
I was sad, and also I started to resent him even more. When we would go on our walks, I used to feel sorry for him in the beginning when he was barking, but then after the daycare incident, I resented him a lot more. I felt sorry for him a little bit, but I was angry at him, and there were thoughts of possibly returning him to Boston Buddies, but I wanted to try something else before doing that.
Good. And that's how you
I didn't feel like I was a good leader for Ziggy, because his behavior wasn't changing no matter how hard I tried on my own.
Right. Yeah. And, then you came to see me, and just, let's just get right to it. How is your relationship and your walks with Ziggy now?
I think my anxiety level has reduced dramatically. I would say 60 to 70%.
Wow.
I'm still dealing with my own fear, but the tools that you gave me do make me feel more empowered and more in control of Ziggy. And because of that feeling, our walks are calmer, and we can pass by a dog who's probably 10 feet of us, and no barking or lunging.
Right.
And seeing that is so liberating and such a relief. And that gives me hope that Ziggy and I can work through this together.
Yeah, I think you can, and I'm glad you said that you see your fear there that's holding you back, because you see that Ziggy can do it, but you're feeling a little embarrassed or whatever with people because, let's face it, we care about what people think about us,
Yeah.
And that's why I want to put together a group of people who would come into your neighborhood too, where Ziggy is. Do you see what I'm saying? And that way you can do exactly what you should be doing, and that person that's on the other end of you with that leash and their dog is not going to judge you. In fact, they're going to help you until you get it right. and they're going to help their dog also. You see?
Yeah, I would really appreciate a supportive group like that.
Yeah, that's what we're going to do. That's why, especially those people who are having problems with walking dogs. Once we have determined that your dog can be with other dogs, then the group will come in to help you with the walk. The reason why the dog is acting this way is because they see their environment as prey. Why? Because when the human goes into the environment outside of their home, they become weak. That weakness is transferred to the dog, which emboldens them to become dominant. And so they feel that they should be like this in that world. That's a different world. And so we want to make them feel the same way that they feel in the house outside, and that's what this group is going to be doing. And I'll set up the scenarios for people to see, and we'll videotape it. Okay?
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
So I want to thank you for coming on. I want to see him again. I want you to call me, because when you have fear, you have to stay plugged in to me so that I could hear these things and tell you how to respond. Okay?
Okay.
All right, great. So
Okay.
we will talk to you soon. All right, Grace?
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Brandon.
You're very welcome. Well,
Bye.
Bye. Well, our next guest is Nathaniel. Nathaniel, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. I'm excited to talk to you because you were a phone consult, too. I have not seen the dog other than a picture. And
Right.
these are all rescue dogs. Both of Annie and Hope are rescue dogs?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you kind of tell the story, where they came from and, you know?
Annie, we've had for about, almost 6 years now. She was a foster dog, and, we ended up taking her from the foster home.
Mm-hmm.
And after one of our dogs, we had 2 dogs, and one of our dogs died, so, to keep the other one company, basically.
Mm-hmm.
When Annie came into the house, she was, very rambunctious and, a little out of control, and, everybody was always, recommending training and everything like that. But for the most part, she got along with the other dog really well. So we didn't really do anything about it because we didn't, at that point we just figured, oh, well, that's just the way she is, there's nothing to do about it. She would pull on the leash and, she'd sort of be a little aggressive, at the dog park or something, but in a good-natured way. She just wanted to play.
Mm-hmm.
So, there was never any issue with her, right? So we never really did anything about that at that moment. Then the other dog that we had passed away, a couple months ago, so we decided, and Annie was really bummed out, so we decided to go rescue a dog from the shelter, and we ended up rescuing a little, like a little staffy, so it's like a small pit.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, because we've always had really good luck, bringing dogs into the house, even dogs from our friends and everything like that, we didn't think anything of it. We just ended up bringing this dog into the house, and the dog had been on the street, so we ended up chalking up like its behavior to the fact that it just had to kind of get used to the fact of being in a house. And for the most part, after the initial introductions and everything, the 2 dogs were getting along well, or at least in terms of what we felt their behavior, although, sometimes if people came into the house or other dog came into the house, Hope would kind of, go ballistic and get very aggressive. And again, we just felt like that was something that was going to be working its way out, because she had just come from the street.
Mm-hmm.
So after, so she started getting more acclimated to the house, which was great. And we would let Annie and Hope kind of hang out and play fight together, as you mentioned earlier on the show.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't really understand what that was. Now we understand more about what that was.
Mm-hmm.
So every now and then, the fight would escalate, the playing would escalate into an actual fight. And it wasn't necessarily only caused by Hope or only caused by Annie. It depended on what happened while they were playing. So, if one of them got, sort of accidentally injured, quote unquote, during their play fight, then the other one would retaliate, basically. And so once it was Annie who actually, initiated the situation. The other one was Hope initiated the situation, but it started getting a little bit worse as time progressed, and then we didn't really know what to do about it. We had to start separating the dogs, and they couldn't be in the same room together. It became like a complete ridiculous nightmare in the house, and we didn't quite know what to do. So we ended up contacting Angel City Pit Bulls, and they recommended us to you, and then so we've been working with you over the phone for the last few weeks. So that's the information.
Now, the information here, the important thing here, because we're over the phone, and the reason I do phone consults is when I think that I don't necessarily need to see the dog, I just think it's a matter of you not understanding why things are happening because you're addressing the symptoms. Well, my dog's had a fight. Okay, well, we understand that. The question is why the fights took place. And this is where the information becomes very important. And now that we've talked about this, if we look at everything, what does this mean to you as an individual, as a businessman, in dealing with your dogs? What has this information done for you? What do you think?
Well, I think that, what we ended up realizing was that, it's sort of like everybody is part of, you mentioned earlier in the show, it takes a village, and then, and with the dog it takes, I think, what did you say? A path. And there's a certain kind of total, ecosystem, involved. We have a relationship with the dogs. We have a relationship with other humans. All of these animals, including humans, are all social. And what we've been learning is that having been parents and dealing with kids. Our kids are now 18, so it's not exactly the situation. But a lot of times people end up saying when they have a dog, it's like having a child again. But the problem is that we end up feeling like we can communicate with the child because the child's a human, and then you end up getting stuck with the dog because, obviously there's a limited amount of communication that you can have. And so we were feeling somewhat powerless in terms of dealing with the dog, although from an intellectual point of view, I think we could understand what was going on between the dogs, right? But we didn't know how we could actually step in and deal with it. And since working with you and understanding, this idea of creating this hierarchy, and doing it in a way that the dogs understand, from my point of view, is just very similar to, just methods that I use at work and, with other social relationships that I have, which is, basically understanding where the other side is coming from so that you can actually communicate with them in a way that they understand. And the goal is obviously for me always to get what I want out of the situation. so it's about, at some point, there's a, you might have to check your ego at the door, or you might not have to get credit, or you might, whatever it is, because ultimately the important thing is getting what you want.
Right.
And, so with the dogs, we've been learning that that's the same thing. It's just almost acting. You have to put a game face on and just kind of act in a way that they get.
You have to play a part. You got to be an actor or an actress,
Yeah.
to be believable.
And that's and the hard part about that is that sometimes you just end up feeling like, or we ended up feeling like, God, we don't like this part that we have to play, basically. It's like, it's not who we are as people, or it's not, this kind of like tough guy,
Right.
kind of stand your ground, kind of hold your own, dominating them and all
Right.
this kind of stuff. But the fact of the matter is that, they responded to it very, very immediately, so much so that we ended up feeling like, wow, that was pretty stupid, you know, like, you know, like if it was that easy, you know.
Right.
No, you know, and like having kids, I mean, it's, you know, a bit of constant work. I mean, you know, to be frank, you know, we were used to having dogs that basically, you know, we could turn our back on them, we could walk away from them, they would just like kind of be around, you know, and,
right.
and I think what we have now is that, you know, we sort of got lucky in the sense that we always had, you know, dogs that were either submissive or we had a dog that was a dominant and a submissive or whatever it was.
Right.
That the social relationship between everybody was actually working. What we realize now is that was probably just a very kind of coincidental, fortunate
Exactly.
relationship.
You know, Nathan, you're in the concept, you're in the realm of no kill now. And see, that's a different thing going on there. You know, at the time, everyone had subordinate dogs, and breeders bred for subordination, and those dogs that were alphas, betas, or runts, they generally didn't see the light of day. You know, they were out of there, or they were used as guard dogs. And so now we got this big melting pot of dogs where we all want to save the lives of these dogs, and we've got alphas, betas, subordinates, and runts all mixed up in the same pot. So you reach in, you pull one out of the shelter, you get it home, and you say, what is this? I've had dogs all my life, and I never had to deal with this, right?
Yeah.
Well, you know, sometimes you can have a child that when they reach a teenage year, they're going to say something to you that's going to take you back a bit and say, you can't talk to me that way, right? They're going to bark at you. And dogs do the same thing, especially dogs that have a history, a past from someone else, you know. And even though the things that I told you to do were difficult, and look, I've got women that say, Brandon, this was difficult. Here's a guy that's saying also this was difficult. But I'm going to ask you something. In the difficulty of what I asked you to do, would you say that it was abusive in any way to the dog?
No, I mean, it wasn't abusive.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, you know, one of the things that, you know, when you were talking to one of the earlier guests, and,
mm-hmm.
you know, and this kind of like embarrassment or like, you know, going to the dog park.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, like understanding that, you know, among dog people, you know, this idea of actually being assertive,
mm-hmm.
You know, and even very, like what somebody might even consider like, you know, violently assertive, but
mm-hmm.
from a verbal point of view,
mm-hmm.
you know, not from a physical point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, like in a certain way, it's not behavior that we would ever tolerate, like, between humans.
Right.
You know, because like it's something that you end up thinking is like, wow, that's like mental abuse, basically.
Uh-huh.
You know, which with humans, it is mental abuse.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, it can be for sure.
We do it.
We do it.
Yeah.
But it's not. But that's because our own way of dealing with each other, I think, is different. You know, I mean, like the dogs actually don't. That's not how they deal with one another.
Right.
And I think that, you know, so the difficulty with regard to that, I think, is also that you know, we feel that we're being mean or we feel we're being abusive, even though it's only abusive in terms of how we might view like a human relationship or
mm-hmm.
something like
mm-hmm.
that. It's not the same thing. So, in any case, that's why it's difficult because, you know, who wants to be built for that, basically?
Yeah, we actually don't want to rescue dogs to be dominant over them. We rescue them to love them and save them.
Right.
And, right. I get that, you know. But
and that's what's hard, you know. I mean, that's the hard part.
Yeah.
And the thing is that, like, you know, it was really hard for the first 3 days. I mean, I was just sitting in the bed with both dogs and, you know, my legs were over one and the other one had its head in my lap and, you know, they were basically touching each other, right? So
right.
It wasn't, you know, it's not like, you know, it's not like at this point we're being, you know, super game facey.
Right.
But that's because that's because the dogs already know that if the game face comes back on, they know how to behave. I don't need to have the game face on every moment.
And that's all you're doing. you're replacing. Someone told me, just like you said, man, that was so simple. And you would say that was simple too, right? And,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I told them, I said, look, the problem that you have was developed so simply that you didn't even see it coming. And all of a sudden it was there. That's how simple it is. And so fixing the problem should be just as simple once you understand. You got to know what
Right.
you're dealing with, And dogs, when we talk about love and affection, we have a certain criteria that we have this guideline about what we consider to be love, and animals have one that's a little different. To them, it's just a little different though. To them, love and affection with the alpha is one that is going to protect them from all other predators, that's going to lead them to food, lead them to water, and keep everybody in line with a firm hand. Okay?
Right.
To them, they follow an alpha that can make them feel like that. That's nature talking. Nature says you must follow an alpha like that. Okay? We think, well, if I bribe you and give you some treats and tell you I love you and touch you and hug you and kiss you, then you're going to see me as an alpha. And the dog says, no, that's not the way nature wired me. I see you as being weak, submissive, and subordinate.
Right.
And that's where we run into problems, because we have to be what they need first and then get the perks of being what humans want. And that's
Right.
basically what I'm saying.
And the thing is that, like, what we also realize is that it's this idea of, like, if we're approaching them from, no, I don't know, this might be a wrong thing, right? But let me know, because this is just something that I've been thinking about. And that is, look, I mean, dogs are domesticated. Like,
Yeah.
we love them, I love them, everything like that. But there's a certain sense of, when you look at them, that, I mean, they are animals. Like, and sometimes my wife and I end up, like, saying, like, isn't it just weird that we have, like, animals just living in our house? Just wandering around the house, like, and they have sharp teeth and they have their own thing. It's like, and there's always going to be something basically unpredictable about them. Like, we're never going to completely predict what they're going to do, or at least in our minds, we're not going to be able to predict what they're going to do.
Well, we got it, Nathan, man, the time is rolling. I can't believe we're here already. I definitely want to have you back on. It was very interesting talking to you. There are some things that I want to mention to you and want to hear, your feedback on, and I think the people that are listening are going to want to hear too. So would you agree that you would come on again?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. Well, then I'm going to end the show here now because we're at the end, and I will talk to you later, okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening, and tune into the Fouché Way radio show next Thursday.
You're listening to Fouché Way with Brandon Fouché, right here on LA Talk Radio.